Part 20. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 191. Lu Changxiao gritted his teeth and said, Tian Tian was kidnapped. Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat after hearing this, and said, Second Master, can you handle it yourself? Lu Changxiao said, It's okay, I can handle it. Madam, don't worry. Just protect her. Okay, Second Master, I will tell Madam. After saying that, Lu Changxiao hung up the phone, stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and raced all the way. Lu Cheng returned to the classroom and explained the situation to Wei Yuxian truthfully, Madam, the second master's girlfriend has been kidnapped, and the second master is on his way there now. Wei Yuxian's eyes widened and she thought she had heard it wrong. Otherwise, how could she have heard such fantastic news? She took a deep breath and asked, You said Tian Tian was kidnapped? Lu Cheng nodded firmly and said, Yes, Madam, but you don't have to worry. The second master can handle this matter by himself. The second master also told you not to worry and go to class with peace of mind. Wei Yuxian was still a little worried and asked, Is it really okay? Can he handle it by himself? After all, he was kidnapped, which is no small matter. Lu Cheng said with certainty, Madam, it's really okay. Second master is very capable. Miss, you will be fine. Wei Yuxian felt a little relieved when she thought that Lu Changxiao was Fu Xuanyi's subordinate and his second in command. If he had no ability, he would not be able to sit in this position. Lu Changxiao is also very capable, and he can mobilize many people, so there won't be any problems. Since he said it can be handled, it can be handled. But Wei Yuxian was still a little worried, afraid that something would happen to Tian Tian. I don't know who is so bad and wants to kidnap someone. Does he have a grudge against Lu Changxiao? Wei Yuxian prayed in her heart that nothing would happen to Tian Tian and Lu Changxiao. Wei Yuxian was a little absent-minded in the next class, thinking about Yu Wanchen's kidnapping. After finally getting through to the end of get out of class, she immediately turned to ask Lu Cheng, Has your second master sent you a message? How is the matter handled? Lu Cheng shook his head and said, No, the second master didn't send me a message. Seeing how worried she was, Akong comforted her and said, Madam, you don't have to worry. With second master's ability, Tian Tian will definitely be rescued. Ali also said, Yes, Madam, everything will be fine. The second master is very capable. He has a group of brothers who will not suffer any loss. Hearing this, Wei Yuxian also knew to believe their words and try to think of the best. After walking out of the classroom, taking the elevator downstairs with his classmates, and then walking out of the teaching building, Lu Cheng looked at the parking place and saw that the place was empty. He knew that the car had been driven away by Lu Changxiao. He said, Madam, the second master drove away the car. Let's take the school bus. He saw a school bus parked in front of the teaching building with several classmates on it. Wei Yuxian didn't want to walk such a long distance, so she nodded and said, Okay, it just so happens that I can also experience the feeling of a school bus. The school bus is actually similar to a sightseeing bus. You just need to pay for getting on the bus. In the past, when Wei Yuxian was in school, she had to save every penny, so naturally she was reluctant to take the school bus. After going to Fu's house, she couldn't take the school bus even if she had the conditions. There are exactly 4 seats left on the school bus, which are enough for them to sit. However, these 4 seats are somewhat scattered. They are connected 2 by 2 and they cannot sit together. Lu Cheng wanted to discuss it with others to see if he could make room for them and let them sit together. But Wei Yuxian told him no, it would be fine if they sat separately. So, Wei Yuxian and Ali sat together, and Akong and Lu Cheng sat together. The school bus was full of people, and the driver asked, Where are the students going? Wei Yuxian told the driver that he was going to a certain canteen. The driver said okay and started the car. In the car, other classmates were chatting, and Wei Yuxian also chatted with Ali, but in her heart, she couldn't help but worry about Lu Changxiao and Yu Wanchen. The driver was driving and suddenly drove the car into a hidden lane. Kong felt something was wrong and asked, "Driver, where is this road going?" The driver smiled and looked very talkative and said, "There is a classmate who wants to go to the library. I will send him there first. This road is closer and I don't want to waste the student's time." There is nothing wrong with this rhetoric. Wei Yuxian, Kong, and others didn't fully understand the school. After all, the school was really too big and they couldn't remember every step, so they didn't think much about it. Little did they know what kind of bad news would be waiting for them next. The trail is getting more and more remote, there is no one around, and there are even fewer cameras. I didn't know where I was driving, but suddenly, the car braked suddenly and stopped, and everyone leaned forward with inertia. Lu Cheng was a little angry and asked, "What's going on? Why did you stop so quietly?" He had been paying attention to the front. There was obviously no movement in front, but the driver just stopped the car. Before they could react, the classmates around them all changed their expressions. They took out towels from nowhere and covered their mouths and noses. They struggled in panic for a few times and then fainted. Xiao looked at the fainted people and said, "Okay, call someone to drive over and move quickly." It turns out that this school bus was specially arranged by Xiao Yu, and the people on the bus were all their people, just to catch Wei Yuxian and others. This is just one of Xiao's plans. If Wei Yuxian doesn't get on the school bus, she has other options. Wei Yuxian never imagined that such a thing would happen on campus. Even before she passed out, she was still thinking that maybe Tianatian's kidnapping was not an accident. The purpose of these people may not be Tian. Tian is just a means for them to drive Lu Changxiao away. The real purpose of these people is themselves. But why do they do this? When did you offend them? Her identity is not a secret in the school. Not everyone, at least most of them know her identity. But these people still did this. Aren't they afraid of Fu Xuanyi's revenge? Or are they powerful enough to compete with Fu Xuanyi? Wei Yuxian couldn't understand, her mind became more and more confused, and her struggle became weaker and weaker, until she lost consciousness. Within 2 minutes, 2 black business cars drove over, with Qin Zimu sitting in the car. She lowered the car window and saw that Xiao Yu and others had succeeded. She raised the corners of her mouth and said, "Xiao Yu, I really saw you right." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 192. Xiao also smiled at Qin Zimu and asked, "Sister Mu, do you want to bring these 3 people with you?" She was referring to Lu Cheng and others. Qin Zimu thought for a while, looked at Wei Yuxian and others as if they were looking at garbage, and said, "Take it with you." "Okay, Sister Mu," Xiao said with a smile, and then directed people to carry Wei Yuxian and others into the commercial vehicle. The capacity of the commercial vehicle was limited. After Xiao Yu, Wei Yuxian, and others got on the bus, there was no space left, so the bodyguards had to sit in the car at the back. In the car, Qin Zimu looked at Wei Yuxian right in front of him, the expression on his face was full of disgust. Xiao told the driver to drive to the destination quickly and leave the school early. Then, she looked at Qin Zimu flatteringly and said, "Sister Mu, this time we finally caught someone." Qin Zimu was still in a good mood. He said and said, "Xiao, what reward do you want?" Xiao is thoughtful and smart, otherwise he wouldn't be so comfortable around Qin Zimu. She smiled and said, "Sister Mu, I don't want anything. As long as it makes Sister Mu happy, I don't ask for anything." Qin Zimu became even happier after hearing her words, and the look in her eyes became different. After thinking about it, She said, "No, you are a great hero, how can you not give me any reward? I, Chin Zimu, am not like that. A stingy person. Xiao, if you want anything, just say it. I will definitely give it to you." If Xiao hadn't made suggestions this time, she might not have been able to catch Wei Yuxian so smoothly. Xiao resisted and said, "Sister Mu, I really don't want anything. If you really feel sorry for me, you can just treat me to a meal. I'll be satisfied." When several other girls saw Xiao's reaction, they secretly praised her for being able to speak. In fact, there is nothing Xiao doesn't want. She was greedy, just waiting for Sister Mu to tell her what to give her. With Sister Mu's character, it is impossible not to give her anything. Xiao just knew Qin Zimu's personality, so she said such words in a coquettish manner. In this way, she will gain Qin Zimu's trust even more. From now on, no one will have a chance to surpass her. The position of the first person beside Qin Zimu must be her Xiao. Sure enough, Qin Zimu then said, "Since you don't have anything you want, let me decide what to give you." Then she thought about it, and after a few minutes, she said, "The apartment outside the school will be yours from now on. As soon as you sell it, it's a house." Very proud. Xiao Yu was so overwhelmed by the happiness. She never expected that Sister Mu would directly give her a house. She thought that Sister Mu would only give her tens of thousands of dollars at most. Who would have thought that it would be such a big surprise? The apartment outside the school is not cheap, it costs several million. She was flattered and asked in disbelief, "Really, really, Sister Mu? Are you serious?" Qin Zimu patted her shoulder and said, "Of course it's true. When did I ever tell a lie?" The corners of Xiao's mouth were almost as big as the sun, but soon, she stopped her smile and pretended to say, "Forget it, Sister Mu, this is too expensive, you'd better treat me to a meal. I stay by your side, Sister Mu, not for these reasons, but because I really think about you and do things for you willingly." Qin Zimu leaned on the chair and said, "You can take it if I give it to you. I have several houses like this. I don't lack this one. As long as you follow me well, you will be indispensable for your prosperity and wealth in the future." She is a young lady of the Qin family, and her sister is the president of the Qin group. The family dotes on her. It is just a house, and it is up to her to give it away. Xiao pretended to shirk for a few more times, and finally made Qin Zimu a little impatient, so he reluctantly said, "In that case, I will accept it, Sister Mu." "Thank you, Sister Mu, from now on, Xiao, I, will be Sister Mu yours." She thanked Qin Zimu and expressed her sincerity to Qin Zimu. Qin Zimu nodded yeah and said to the other girls, "You all should learn from Xiao and stay with me. It will be of great benefit to you. If anyone can help me so much next time, I will do the same, give her a house." Several girls were jealous when they heard her talk about giving away a house. Now when they heard Qin Zimu say this, they nodded quickly and said, "Now that we know Sister Mu, we will definitely learn from Sister Xiao." On Luchan Xiao's side, ever since he received the call, he rushed towards his destination non-stop. The 1-hour journey was shortened to 40 minutes. On the way there, he also met with his men, and several cars arrived at the destination together. In front of me, there is an abandoned factory building, which is so dilapidated in the suburbs. After arriving at the destination, he immediately took out his mobile phone and called Yu Wanchen's mobile phone, trying to contact those people. But he called 3 times and couldn't get through. He really couldn't wait any longer and gave his 2 men a look. The 2 tough men immediately understood and went forward to open the door of the factory. He walked in front, his face still gloomy, his right hand in his pocket, with a Swiss Army knife inside. His men walked in behind him and looked at the surrounding environment warily. The factory building was full of dust. I don't know how long it had been left there, and the air was stuffy. There were also a lot of discarded debris inside, piled high in piles, blocking the view. Lu Changxiao walked in based on his feeling, walked around the debris, walked for a while, and came to an open place. Search separately, he ordered. The subordinates took the order, divided into several teams, and started searching in the factory. After a while, several teams came back and said, "Second master, I didn't see anyone." Lu Changxiao narrowed his eyes and realized that he had been tricked. Tian was not even here. This is just a cover for those people. He angrily kicked the debris around him, and with a bang, the tall debris fell down, raising dust all over the room. He led people out of the abandoned factory, gritted his teeth, and his eyes turned red, and said, "Check it for me." Yes. After getting back into the car, Lu Changxiao pounded the car several times and gritted his back molars. He wants to know where his sweetness is. One of his men came over to drive a car for him and asked him, "Second master, where are you going now?" Lu Changxiao took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down and think, and then said, "Go back to school." The subordinate said yes and quickly started the car and drove as fast as possible. On the way back, Lu Changxiao received another WeChat call from Yu Wanchen. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 193. Almost immediately, Lu Changxiao clicked the call, suppressing his anger, and asked, "Where is the person?" The voice on the other end of the phone was neither salty nor cool, still wearing the voice changer, and said, "Mr. Lu, don't worry, I just made a little joke with you." Play, laugh. Lu Changxiao almost broke his teeth. He had better pray that he would never be found by him in this life, otherwise he would let him know how unfunny this joke is. Then the person over there reported Lu Changxiao's address and said, "Mr. Lu, please come over quickly." Lu Changxiao clenched his free hand into a fist and asked, "What if I still don't see anyone this time? What is your purpose? How much money do you want? If it's for me, let her go, she's just an innocent person." The person over there just smiled and hung up the phone without saying anything. Lu Changxiao was so angry that he threw away his cell phone. He cursed a few dirty words. But now was not the time for him to curse. He quickly ordered his men to drive to the place where the man just said, and then waited anxiously. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. In this life, no one has dared to play with him like this, Lu Changxiao. Everyone knew that he, Lu Changxiao, was working under Master Xian. Others didn't care about his face, and for Master Xian's sake, they didn't dare to play with him like this. Now this group of people, their courage is not ordinary. It just so happened that Lu Changxiao hadn't seen blood for a long time. This time, he would never let these people go easily. The car drove for about an hour and finally reached its destination, which was another abandoned factory. Lu Changxiao was upset when he saw this thing, so he sent someone to check the situation to see if it was a cover-up. Soon, his subordinates came back and reported, "Second master, there are 2 people in the factory, both tied to chairs." Being tied to a chair, who else could be there but his Tian? As for the other person who was kidnapped together, he should be Tian's friend. He asked, "Didn't you find anyone else?" The subordinate shook his head and said, "No one was found in ambush." Now, it was Lu Changxiao's turn to be confused. What did this group of people mean by bringing him here, but there was no one there? Is it just to play with him? Without any time to think about it, Lu Changxiao got out of the car and decided to rescue the person first. Tian must have been frightened after being kidnapped for so long. His subordinates walked ahead, opened the door of the factory, and led him inside. Soon, Lu Changxiao saw the person he had been worrying about. Yu Wanchen and her friend were tightly tied to the chairs, and their mouths were sealed with tape. At this moment, the men were untying them. Yu Wanchen and her friends were frightened, their faces were full of tears, and their faces were extremely pale. The moment she saw Lu Changxiao, Yu Wanchen's tears fell even harder. As soon as the rope was loosened, she stumbled and ran towards Lu Changxiao. Lu Changxiao also quickened his pace, hugged her into his arms, patted her back gently and comforted her. "It's okay, Tian Tian, don't be afraid, I'm here." How could Yu Wanchen not be afraid? Her body was trembling and she shouted, "Lu Changxiao, Lu Changxiao. I'm here, I'm here." Lu Changxiao increased his strength and hugged the person in his arms more tightly. Over there, the friend finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Lu Changxiao's appearance. He stood up weakly and walked over with the help of his men. She said thank you to her men, and had them release her so that she could hold on. She said, "Lu Changxiao, you have to investigate this matter." Lu Changxiao looked at her and said, "I know, I will find out. Thank you for staying with Tian Tian, and I am really sorry for making you suffer this." The friend shook his head and said, "It's okay, they didn't do anything to us, we were just scared. Tian Tian is more timid, so you can coax her." "Yeah," Lu Changxiao said, "I still want to thank you." Lu Changxiao was completely relieved when his friends said that those people didn't do anything to them. As long as they were okay, otherwise, he really couldn't imagine what he would do. He lowered his head to look at the person in his arms. The person in his arms was still crying hard and was very frightened. "It's not a good place to stay here for a long time." He picked up the person and said, "Let's go out first, and then you can tell me what happened. I will never let those people go." The friend said okay and followed Lu Changxiao out. In the car, Lu Changxiao was still holding Yu Wanchen, his big hands gently comforting her on her back, and said, "Okay, tell me." My friend recalled the situation and told it from beginning to end. "Have you seen what they look like?" The friend shook his head and said, "They attacked from behind. Neither Tian Tian nor I saw their appearance. When we woke up, we were tied up in the factory, and there was no one around. It can be said that there are no clues at all." Lu Changxiao cursed the cunningness of those people in his heart, but no matter how perfect things were, there would always be a breakthrough. It was only a matter of time before this matter was found out. He said, "I understand, and I won't let you suffer anything like this again in the future." In her arms, Yu Wanchen finally came out of her fear. She looked up at Lu Changxiao and asked, "A Chang, do you know who they are? Why do they want to arrest us?" Lu Changxiao lowered his head and touched her head, shook his head and said, "I don't know yet, I have to check, maybe it's my enemy, I'm sorry, Tian Tian, for causing trouble to you." Yu Wanchen shook her head slightly and said, "Fortunately, they didn't do anything." "Do you have many enemies?" Lu Changxiao said and said, "A lot, but it's not convenient to tell you right now." He did not tell Yu Wanchen his true identity, because Yu Wanchen was just an ordinary person and would not be exposed to such things on weekdays. He probably had never heard of his name, Lu Changxiao. He thought that he would tell her later when he found a suitable opportunity. At least, not now. Yu Wanchen now knew that Lu Changxiao's identity was not simple, but she consciously did not ask any more questions, and just said, "In the future, you must pay attention to safety." "I understand," Lu Changxiao said, "Tian Tian, I will definitely tell you in the future." "It's okay Chang, you can tell me anytime you want." Lu Changxiao looked at his little girlfriend's still pale face, and he hated those people in his heart. He won't let any of these people go. One by one, wait for him. Just when he was thinking about what to do with those people he caught, he received a call from Fu Xuanyi. He just dropped the phone and the screen was shattered, but it was still usable. He answered the phone, "Master Xian." Over there, Fu Xuanyi's cold voice came, where is Madam? After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju. Chapter 194. About 10 minutes before this, it was lunchtime. Huan Jinyu brought the rice in, and Fu Xuanyi raised his head from work, looked at the time, and started eating. During the break, he took out his cell phone to see if his wife had sent him a message. Usually during breaks, his little girl will send him messages, especially during lunchtime. She will come to ask if he has eaten on time. Sometimes, they would make video calls and watch each other eat, which was another sense of eating together. But today, when he turned on his phone, there was no message. His Guai didn't look for him, nor did he ask him if he had eaten on time. After calculating the time, Guai had finished class now. Even if he went to the cafeteria to eat, it was time to buy food and return to the apartment. Did Guai forget to send him a message? Fu Xuanyi took a bite of rice and sent her a message, "Have you eaten obediently?" There was no reply from the other side. After waiting for a while, there was still no reply. Fu Xuanyi did not send another message, but called WeChat, but the phone rang for a long time and no one answered. He called several times in a row, but no one answered. Then, he changed the method and called her instead of WeChat. When the phone call came, a voice came saying that Wei Yuxian had turned off her phone. A strong intuition told Fu Xuanyi that something was wrong. Something was very wrong. With a sullen face, he called Lu Changxiao, and the first thing he said after the call was, "Where's Madam?" On Lu Changxiao's side, after hearing Master Xian's words, he first showed a puzzled expression and asked, "Isn't Madam at school?" As soon as these words came out, Fu Xuanyi knew that he was not beside Wei Yuxian, and his tone became even colder. He put his left hand on the handle of the chair, grabbed it hard, and asked, "Where are you?" Lu Changxiao briefly told the story of his girlfriend's kidnapping, and after finishing speaking, he asked, "Master Xian, did something happen to Madam?" "You've fallen into a trap," Fu Xuanyi said. "Now, contact the people around Madam immediately. If something happens to Madam." Lu Changxiao also reacted, quickly said "okay" several times, hung up the phone, and turned to contact Lu Cheng and others. He asked why Tian Tian was kidnapped for no reason. It turned out that the real purpose of those people was not Tian Tian or Lu Changxiao, but Madam. "Madam, something is probably going to happen now." Lu Changxiao frantically called Lu Cheng several times, but none of the calls were answered. Lu Cheng couldn't get through, so he tried calling a Kong and a Li, but he still couldn't get through. He ordered the driver in front of him, "Drive faster. Go back to school quickly." Yu Wanchen looked at his anxious face and asked, "What's wrong, Aiken? What happened?" Lu Changxiao hugged the person in his arms tightly and said, "Something happened to Madam. I was sent by Master Xian to protect Madam. You know this." He had told Yu Wanchen about this. After Yu Wanchen learned the news, he didn't ask any more questions and just said that he knew. Yu Wanchen and her friend also realized what they were doing at this moment. The former said, "So, those people's goal is not us at all, but MRS Fu, right?" Lu Changxiao gritted his back molars tightly and said, "These people are really good at it." It immediately pinched his lifeline, knowing that he would not abandon Tian Tian. It was precisely because of his negligence that something happened to his wife. He acknowledged this. After finding his wife, he will definitely apologize to Master Xian personally. On Wei Yuxian's side, Qin Zimu and others drove to a villa in the suburbs. This was a private area and no one was allowed to enter without the owner's permission. The owner of this villa is Qin Zimu. In the basement of the villa, Wei Yuxian was tied to a chair and was still in a coma. Lu Cheng and the other three were randomly thrown into a corner. Not far in front of Wei Yuxian, there was a sofa, on which Qin Zimu and Xiao Yu were sitting. Other girls and bodyguards were standing behind the sofa. Qin Zimu took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, shook one out, and held it in his hand. Xiao next to her very discerningly took out a lighter and lit it for her. Qin Zimu was very satisfied with Xiao's actions. He put the cigarette into his mouth and took a puff. After a while, he slowly spit it out and said in a lazy voice, "Wake the person up. The show is about to begin. If this woman faints, she won't be able to sing the show." A bodyguard said yes, picked up a bucket of water, and poured it towards Wei Yuxian. The drug-induced time was almost over, and Wei Yuxian suddenly felt a chill in her body, so cold, and then slowly woke up. Her mind is still a little unclear and her reaction is a little slow. She looked at the unfamiliar environment around her. Her body was wet and uncomfortable. She wanted to raise her hand to wipe the water from her face, only to realize that she was tied up. Under the biting cold, she woke up and saw Qin Zimu sitting directly in front of her. She twisted a few times, trying to break free from the restraints on her body, but they were tied very tightly, and the more she moved, the more pain she would get. The memories before she fell into coma suddenly emerged, and Wei Yuxian remembered that she was now kidnapped. The person who kidnapped him should be the woman in front of him. Her body was trembling slightly and she was cold. She saw Qin Zimu's appearance clearly and recalled in her mind when she had offended this person. But after thinking about it, she couldn't find any memory about this woman. She was very sure and certain that she did not know this person. Then why did she kidnap herself? How long has it been since she was kidnapped? Does Fu Xuanyi know about this? Wei Yuxian was a little scared, but she was not so scared that she couldn't think. The experience of more than a year had made her stronger, and she was no longer the timid person she was before. She looked at Qin Zimu and asked, "Who are you? What is the purpose of kidnapping me?" Qin Zimu then remembered that this woman didn't know him yet, so he gave Xiao beside him a look and asked her to introduce him. Xiao Yu immediately said, "This is the second young lady of the Qin family, the Qin family who is one of the best in Kyoto." As soon as these words came out, Wei Yuxian knew who she was. In Kyoto, there is no other family that can be called the Qin family except the Qin Junling family. So, this is Qin Junling's sister? She looked at Qin Zimu's face and found that she did look a bit like Qin Junling. They were undoubtedly sisters. After learning who the person who kidnapped her was, Wei Yuxian's panic calmed down. "Second Miss Qin, do you know my identity before kidnapping me?" Although the Qin family can be considered a powerful presence in Kyoto, compared with her Xian, they are still far behind. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 195. Identity. Qin Zimu laughed contemptuously as if he heard something funny. "Is the identity you mentioned Fu Xuanyi's fiancé?" After saying this, Qin Zimu laughed even louder, looking at Wei Yuxian like a clown, laughing wildly. Wei Yuxian didn't know what was so funny about this. She just felt that the woman in front of her was a little mentally disturbed. She knows her identity. Although her knowledge is a little biased, she knows her relationship with Fu Xuanyi. So, is she really fearless? Is she really not afraid at all? Or, I don't know, since when did the Fu family's status become inferior to that of the Qin family? No, it's impossible. Although she doesn't know how deep the Fu family's heritage is, she also knows that the Fu family's status in Kyoto cannot be surpassed. Everyone has said that even the national leaders have to ask Fu Xuanyi when they meet him. Give him some face, this is no joke. Wei Yuxian didn't speak any more and looked intently at the woman who was still laughing wildly. She knew that if she disappeared, Fu Xuanyi would definitely look for her. With Fu Xuanyi's ability, it was only a matter of time before he found her. What will happen during this period, whether her life will be in danger, all depends on how crazy the woman in front of her is. So at this time, She had to delay as much time as possible so that this woman had no chance to take action, waiting for Fu Xuanyi to come and save her. She didn't want to die. She had only been married to Fu Xuanyi for a few days, and her 2 babies had not yet been weaned. She also wanted to see more of the beauty of this world. After the woman finished laughing, she said, "So Miss Jean, what is your purpose of kidnapping me?" She asked the question again. But she almost had the answer in her heart. 80% of it was because of Qin Junling. She and Qin Junling can be regarded as love rivals, because Qin Junling also likes Xian, and Qin Junling has suffered several losses from her. Therefore, this Qin Zimu probably kidnapped him because he wanted to help Qin Junling vent his anger. Thinking about it, she must have spent a lot of time planning this time. After all, he has been following Lu Changxiao and others. If he wants to attack him, he has to go through Lu Changxiao's level. Thinking of this, Wei Yuxian suddenly understood why Tian Tian was kidnapped. They kidnapped Tian Tian in order to lure Lu Changxiao away. What a set of serial schemes that make it difficult for people to guard against. Qin Zimu said, "The purpose of kidnapping you? Think carefully about what you did to my sister. Don't think that just because Fu Xuanyi gave you a name, you really think of yourself as MRS Fu. Let me tell you, MRS Fu's position can only belong to my sister. If you are wise, get out of Fu Xuanyi's face quickly and don't hinder my sister and brother-in-law. If you can give birth to 2 children, you take yourself seriously. You really think highly of yourself. Whether Fu Xuanyi likes you or not is another matter." Wei Yuxian really felt that there was something wrong with this woman's mind, otherwise why would she say such crazy things? Why does MRS Fu's position only belong to her sister? When did she suffer from delusional disorder? Have you gone to the hospital to have your brain checked? Does Qin Junling know that her sister is mentally abnormal? Besides, I'm really sorry for MRS Fu's position. It already belongs to her. Fu Xuanyi personally took her to get the certificate. Their marriage certificate is still in the hands of her parents. If Qin Zimu knew the news, would he be mad to death? Wei Yuxian was not shocked by Qin Zimu's words at all. She only thought that she was an unreasonable child who only thought about the present when doing things without thinking about the consequences. When Fu Xuanyi finds out who kidnapped him, the Qin family will not reap the rewards. She is so confident in her man. Qin Zimu had said so many words, but when he saw Wei Yuxian still ignoring him and lowering his head, he didn't know what he was thinking, and suddenly a senseless anger rushed over his head. She stood up, walked to Wei Yuxian in a few steps, raised Wei Yuxian's head, and asked her to look at her. "What are you thinking about?" "You are in my hands now," Qin Zimu said fiercely. Wei Yuxian felt that she should pretend to be scared at this moment, otherwise, it would only anger this woman even more. She trembled pretending to be scared, and the next second, Qin Zimu's face showed a satisfied expression. He thought he had shocked her, and he felt very proud. Look, how could a kidnapped person not be afraid? This woman was just pretending to be strong. Qin Zimu looked at his subordinate Wei Yuxian's face. It was white and tender, like a piece of tender tofu, and she had an innocent face. No wonder Fu Xuanyi was bewitched by her. She shook Wei Yuxian's face away as if she had touched something dirty. "You look so mean," she cursed, and her words were very unpleasant. Wei Yuxian's heart froze for a moment after hearing this, and then she cursed in her heart, "You look so mean, you are a confused child." Qin Zimu walked back to sit on the sofa and said, "Wei Yuxian, you didn't expect that you would fall into my hands, did you?" Wei Yuxian really didn't expect that she would encounter something like this if she went to school well and didn't offend anyone. She and Qin Zimu looked at each other, and after a while, they looked away. To be honest, she is not very afraid of Qin Zimu now. Let alone her, even if the person sitting in front of her at the moment is Qin Junling, she will not be afraid. But in order to pretend to be weak and delay some time, she had to put away her etch. Turning his head to look elsewhere, he happened to see Lu Cheng and the other two people being thrown into the corner. She took a closer look and found that there were no signs of being beaten on their bodies, they were just fainted, and she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Of the people present now, she was probably the only one in the worst situation. She was poured a bucket of cold water on her body, and she was very wet and uncomfortable. Qin Zimu became more and more satisfied when he saw Wei Yuxian's scared look, and did not expect that she would have the courage to answer him. She continued, "There is still a long time today. Tell me, how should I serve you to make my sister happy? If it weren't for you, why would my sister be so angry? You really deserve to die." Speaking of Qin Junling, here, she had just had lunch in the company and was about to close her eyes and rest for a while. After the project with Fu was discontinued, she had to look for new projects to make up for it, thinking about how to make the company better. Sitting in this position, not only do I have to think about how to run the company better, but I also have to deal with the covetous brothers and sisters in the family. Which descendant of the Qin family doesn't want this seat? They watched one by one, wanting to see themselves make mistakes so that they could be pulled off the stage and sit in that position. Therefore, she lived cautiously and cautiously every day. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 196. Not long after she closed her eyes, she fell asleep tiredly, but before she could enjoy a good sleep, there was a knock on the office door. The knock on the door was loud and urgent, indicating that the person knocking on the door was anxious. Qin Junling was awakened by this movement. Unhappiness flashed across his eyes, and he said with a dark face, "Come in." His voice was still a little hoarse. While rubbing her temples, she thought, the person who knocked on the door had better have something important, and something really important, otherwise, she wouldn't mind scolding the person. I finally got some rest time, and I was woken up just as I fell asleep. Anyone else would be unhappy. As soon as the people outside got the order, they quickly opened the door and came in, walking in front of Qin Junling with a little haste. Qin Junling glanced at the person who walked in. He was her confidant. He could be said to be the most capable assistant around her and one of the few people she could trust. "What's wrong?" She leaned on the chair, still rubbing her painful temples. The confidant said, "Mr. Qin, the second lady took away a group of people this morning, and they haven't come back yet." Qin Junling thought it was something big, so she looked at him accusingly and said, take it away, Xiaomu does things in a measured way, don't worry so much." How could his confidant not be worried? He continued, "Just now news came that Master Xian's wife had been kidnapped. I just went to contact those people and asked if they had kidnapped Mrs. Fu, but the person said no. I asked again, and the man said that he had kidnapped a little girl from the second young lady's school. Mr. Qin, Mrs. Fu and the second young lady are from the same school. Could it be that the second young lady did something stupid just to vent your anger?" Hearing this, Qin Junling's expression also became serious, and the pain in his temples, which had just been relieved, was bursting. She took a deep breath and said, "It may not be Xiaomu who did it. I'll call and ask." His confidant was sweating and said, "Then Mr. Qin, please ask. He is really afraid. The second young lady is fearless. She has been spoiled by the Qin family over the years. Not only does Mr. Qin pamper her, but even the elders of the Qin family dote on her, which makes her what she is now. If Mrs. Fu was really kidnapped by the second lady, then he could not imagine what would happen to the Qin family if Master Xian got angry. I just hope that this is all a coincidence, but he is overthinking it, and the second lady kidnapped someone else. The confidants prayed silently in their hearts, praying that the person Qin Zimu kidnapped would not be Mrs. Fu. Qin Junling took out his mobile phone and called Qin Zimu. The phone rang for more than 10 seconds before he was answered. "Hey sister? What's wrong? Aren't you going to sleep today?" Qin Zimu's voice on the other end of the phone was the same as usual, with an upward tone. When talking to her sister and the elders who doted on her at home, her voice was sweet, just like that of an innocent little girl, and it was the same at this moment. When Qin Junling heard her tone at this moment, he felt that it was just a misunderstanding and asked, "Where are you now?" Qin Zimu looked at Wei Yuxian opposite. There were several red slap marks on the latter's face, which were the work of her, Xiao and others. The more embarrassed Wei Yuxian became, the brighter the smile on her face became, and she said, "I was playing with Xiao and the others in the villa." Qin Junling noticed something was wrong. If she remembered correctly, Xiaomu had a full class today. On that day, Xiaomu would stay at school. She quickly asked, "Is Wei Yuxian in your hands?" Qin Zimu looked a little surprised and asked, "Sister, how do you know this? Are we sisters connected with each other?" "Don't worry, sister, I will teach Wei Yuxian a lesson this time and help you vent your anger." As soon as the words came out, Qin Junling on the other end of the phone was shocked. She didn't expect that Wei Yuxian was really kidnapped by Xiaomu. How could she have such courage? Qin Junling almost didn't even hold the phone and said, "Xiaomu, what did you do to her?" The sweat on the forehead was secreted quickly, and cold sweat broke out. As soon as the confidants in front of her saw her like this and this conversation, they knew that Mrs. Fu had really been kidnapped by Qin Zimu. In an instant, all the confidants wanted to die. Who would it be wrong for this second young lady to tie up? Do you have to mess with Master Xian? Don't you know what Mr. Xian's temper is? Even if Mr. Xian doesn't like Mrs. Fu is still Mr. Xian's. By doing this, the second lady is undoubtedly slapping Mr. Xian in the face. What's more, no one knows whether Mr. Xian really likes Mrs. Fu or pretends to like Mrs. Fu. If it's the former, it's over. He doesn't know if the Qin family is over. Anyway, the second lady is over, completely over. At the villa, Qin Zimu didn't want to hide anything from his sister, and said, "Sister, I just slapped her a few times. It's just the beginning. I won't tell you any more, and I will continue to avenge you." "Xiaomu," Qin Junling called her name loudly, startling Qin Zimu on the other side of the phone. "Sister, why are you shouting so loudly? You scared me." Qin Junling suppressed the panic and anger in his heart and said, "Now, let him go immediately, let him go now. Then send him to the Fu family. I will go over now, and we will go to apologize to Xian. No one knows Wei Yuxian's position in Fu Xuanyi's heart better than her." For Wei Yuxian, Xian did not hesitate to cut off contact with her, and even stop the project. Xian really likes this woman and takes this woman seriously. Xiaomu really hit the iron plate this time. Take advantage of the fact that Xiaomu's mistake is not serious yet, and return him as soon as possible. Maybe Xian won't be so angry and can let Xiaomu go. If Xian finds out on his own, the consequences will be serious. She has only been in this position for a few years, but she can't be ruined by Xiaomu like this. Qin Zimu instantly became unhappy, pursed his lips and asked, "Why, sister? I managed to catch him with great difficulty. You don't know how much effort I put into distracting Lu Changxiao. I don't want to let him go so easily. This bitch Wei Yuxian has made you sad many times, sister. I must." Xiaomu, before she finished speaking, Qin Junling interrupted her seriously, "Do you know what you are doing now? What you are challenging is Fu Xuanyi's bottom line. Do you want to be the enemy of the Fu family? Be obedient, listen to your sister, and let him go now while there is still a chance to turn around. Qin Zimu didn't expect that his sister, who had always doted on him, would be so cruel to him. He felt extremely aggrieved and said, "Sister, I did this all for you. Besides, sister, what are you afraid of? How could Fu Xuanyi really like her? If it weren't for those two children, how would she be where she is today?" After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 197. Xiao Mu, don't be willful. This matter is very serious, Qin Junling said very seriously, his voice rising several degrees unconsciously. "Let Wei Yuxian go immediately, and come with me to Fu's to make amends." Qin Zimu felt even more aggrieved and said, "Sister, you are too cowardly. Sister is a coward. Just wait and see what Fu Xuanyi will do to me. There is no way I will let Wei Yuxian go." After saying that, Qin Zimu hung up the phone, completely ignoring how loud Qin Junling shouted on the other end of the phone. In her opinion, Fu Xuanyi is very powerful, but the Qin family is not bad either, and the relationship between his sister and him is so good, and the relationship between Uncle Fu and his grandfather is also okay. Fu Xuanyi will never do it for someone he doesn't like. And what about her? She didn't do anything to Wei Yuxian, she just taught her a lesson. How could the matter be serious? It was my sister who made such a fuss and was so cowardly that she was afraid of this and that. No wonder my sister was bullied so many times by Wei Yuxian. It turned out that my sister didn't dare to speak in front of Wei Yuxian. My sister is timid, but she is not timid. She is not afraid of Wei Yuxian. The same goes for Fu Xuanyi, she is not afraid of him. Grandpa dotes on her so much, he will definitely not let anything happen to her. How could Qin Zimu, who was so well protected by the Qin family, know what kind of person Fu Xuanyi was, and that Fu's father and Fu's mother, who looked kind, were all so kind to her because of Mr. Qin's face? If there was a conflict of interest between the Qin family and the Fu family, or if the Qin family did something too outrageous, the attitude of the two elders would not be so kind. She naively thought that the world would tolerate her and she could do whatever she wanted. Qin Junling's face turned dark when she saw the hung-up phone call. She quickly got up and called Qin Zimu again while walking out of the office. She called Qin Zimu several times without getting through. Later, this damn girl actually blocked her. Qin Junling was extremely anxious, fearing that the dead girl might do something bad to Wei Yuxian, and he would not be able to explain it to Fu Xuanyi. Taking the elevator downstairs, she asked her confidant, "Which villa is Xiaomu in?" The confidant knew that she wanted to handle this matter personally, so he said, "Mr. Qin, I will send you there." Qin Junling moved quickly to the underground parking lot. His chest rose and fell a little. "Move quickly." The car flew out like an arrow from a bow, and the confidants didn't dare to waste a second. On the way, Qin Junling was thinking about how to maximize the interests of the Qin family. "I'm afraid the Fu family won't let the Qin family off easily this time." While she was thinking about it, she was scolding that stupid sister in her heart. It was not good for her to touch anyone. She had to touch Wei Yuxian. She had to challenge Fu Xuanyi's authority. After thinking for a while, she took out her phone, opened the address book, found Fu Xuanyi's number, hesitated for a while, and dialed it. In the Fu group, Fu Xuanyi sat on a chair with a cold face. Standing in front of him was Guan Jinyue. He took off the Buddhist beads from his wrist and put them in his palm, twisting them with force. He is trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart. Guan Jinyue stood in front of him, feeling that the air around him was extremely cold, but a layer of cold sweat broke out on his body, and he did not dare to look at him. "What a crime! Who is so desperate to kidnap my wife? Do you think you have lived too long?" Guan Jinyue silently raised his hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead, and waited anxiously for his subordinates to convey the news. At this moment, Fu Xuanyi's cell phone placed on the table rang. In the quiet office, the sound seemed particularly harsh. Fu Xuanyi glanced at the mobile phone on the table and saw that the caller was not from Lu Changxiao. He had no intention of answering the call. He was about to hang up the phone, but suddenly thought of something. He picked up the phone and answered the call. The line has no meaning, say. Qin Junling was frightened by his cold voice, and became even more panicked. Although Ah Xian's voice was cold before, it was not as cold as today. It seemed that Ah Xian was more angry than she thought about Wei Yuxian's kidnapping. Actuan, Wei Yuxian. Qin Junling paused for a moment before continuing, Wei Yuxian is at Xiaomu's side. As soon as he finished speaking, the Buddhist beads in Fu Xuanyi's hand were almost crushed. There was obvious fierceness in his eyes. At this moment, he wanted to see blood. Qin Junling suddenly trembled for some reason, as if he felt Fu Xuanyi's anger and was afraid. Actuan, Xiaomu didn't mean it. There may be some misunderstandings between her and Miss Wei. I will go to Xiaomu's place now and send Miss Wei back. By the way, I will take Xiaomu to your place to apologize. Fu Xuanyi did not answer her immediately, and the air was so quiet that it was scary. Of course, the person who was scared was not Fu Xuanyi, but Qin Junling. Just when she thought Fu Xuanyi was going to get angry, 3 emotionless words came from the other side, I got it. Then the call was hung up. Qin Junling took off the phone and was stunned for a while. After coming back to his senses, he recalled Fu Xuanyi's cold tone just now in his mind. He couldn't help but trembled all over again, and his voice also trembled a little, drive faster. The confidant stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and said, it's already the fastest. On Fu's side, after Fu Xuanyi hung up the phone, his shoulders relaxed a little and he leaned back on the chair, but his expression was still as cold as ever. Guan Jinyu pushed his eyes and asked, have you found madam? Fu Xuanyi said and uttered 2 words, Qin family. I'll let the second master go over now. After saying that, he was about to call Lu Changxiao. Fu Xuanyi said, no, let him come here. Guan Jinyu didn't hear what Qin Junling said on the phone just now, and he didn't know what the situation was like now, but since Mr. Xian said no, he thought his wife would be fine. Next, it's all about waiting. He said okay, called Lu Changxiao and asked someone to come over quickly. Suburban villa. After Qin Zimu hung up the phone from Qin Junling, he did not stop bullying Wei Yuxian. They took turns slapping Wei Yuxian on the face and pouring several buckets of cold water on her. The water droplets dripped down her hair and onto the floor, making her look even more embarrassed. However, Wei Yuxian didn't have the slightest fear in her heart. At most, she would suffer a little physical pain. Just when Qin Zimu answered the phone, she knew that she was fine. She would be fine soon. Fu Xuanyi would find her and take revenge on her. Qin Zimu looked at Wei Yuxian's embarrassed look, feeling extremely proud and extremely happy. He raised Wei Yuxian's head and said, how is it? Does it feel good? Did you think of this day when you bullied my sister? Let me tell you, our Qin family is not someone you can bully. If you see my sister in the future, please take a detour, do you know? I saw people from the Qin family walking with their tails between their legs. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 198. In the corner, Lu Chang and the others looked at Wei Yuxian being so humiliated, their eyes turned red with anxiety. If they hadn't been tied up now, they would have really wanted to rush up and beat these people up so hard that they would end up in the hospital. But they can't do anything now, they can only watch the madam being bullied. It was another round of slaps, and the slap marks on Wei Yuxian's face overlapped. She couldn't count how many times she had been slapped. Her face was swollen and red, which looked very scary. Qin Zimu was tired from beating. He walked back to the sofa and sat down on the sofa with his hands on his hips. He said, "Let's rest for a while before beating. Let's have a cigarette." She slumped down on the comfortable sofa like a boss and stretched out her index and middle fingers. Xiao immediately put a cigarette on it for her, took out a lighter and lit it, saying, "Okay, Sister Mew." Qin Zimu took a lazy breath, and after a while he blew out a few smoke rings and chatted with Xiao and others around him. After only a few minutes of chatting, the basement door was suddenly opened hastily. There was a bit of movement. Qin Zimu frowned and turned around impatiently to see who was disturbing him at this time. The curse words came to his lips, but he stopped when he saw the person coming. Because the person who came was her sister. She stood up and saw her sister's dark face, and the cigarette in her hand fell to the ground. She has never seen her sister look so ugly. Qin Junling strode in. When he saw what was going on inside, he really wanted to pry open this stupid sister's brain. See what was inside her brain. She already said she couldn't do anything to Wei Yuxian. She was going to beat him up like this. What was going on in her head? Also, when did she learn to smoke? Looking at this familiar posture, I am afraid that I have learned it long ago, but I didn't realize it. She walked up to Qin Zimu, grabbed her hand, and asked, "When did you learn to smoke? Who taught you?" The sound was so loud that it echoed throughout the basement. After the words fell, the basement fell silent, so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. When Wei Yuxian saw the person coming and the expression on her face, she knew that she was fine and had survived. Next, she was waiting to see Fu Xuanyi. Qin Zimu was frightened by his sister's attitude. He looked at her blankly, unable to say anything. Qin Junling looked at Qin Zimu with hatred, shook her hand away, walked past her, and said, "I'll deal with you later." Before she reached Wei Yuxian, she gave the bodyguards a look and asked them to quickly untie Wei Yuxian. The bodyguards also saw that something was wrong with the situation. Even Mr. Qin came in person. It seemed that Wei Yuxian was a master who could not be offended. Qin Junling tried hard to force out a smile, but this smile was uglier than crying. He took a deep breath and said, "Miss Wei, everything is a misunderstanding. It's my sister who is ignorant and makes you suffer." Ever since Fu Xuanyi stopped cooperating with the Qin family for Wei Yuxian, she had thought clearly about Wei Yuxian's irreplaceable position in Fu Xuanyi's heart. She also tried her best to stop thinking about that man and put her mind on the company. The company has moved to the next level. At first she could still put on a show in front of Wei Yuxian, but not anymore. Fu Xuanyi was standing behind Wei Yuxian. She was no longer the Wei Yuxian who allowed others to bully her. Before anyone wants to bully her, they must look at Fu Xuanyi behind her and decide whether to become her enemy. It was also after that time that Qin Junling decided to avoid dealing with Wei Yuxian in the future, but he never expected that her stupid sister would rush to die. Qin Junling asked someone to bring the towel up again and put it in Wei Yuxian's hands personally, saying, "Miss Wei, wipe it first. We'll go change clothes later. Mr. Fu is waiting for you." When she saw the swelling on Wei Yuxian's face, her heart couldn't help but ache, not because she felt sorry for Wei Yuxian, but because she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear Fu Xuanyi's anger. With how much Fu Xuanyi cherishes Wei Yuxian, if he sees Wei Yuxian's face look like this, he doesn't know how angry he will be. Wei Yuxian took the towel, wiped the water on her face and hands, and then wiped her hair. She glanced at Qin Junling without saying a word, without the slightest fear in her heart. Qin Junling's heart skipped a beat at her look, and he almost got goosebumps. Here, Lu Cheng and the other three were also released. The bodyguards were very quick in their movements and had quick minds. After releasing Wei Yuxian, they came here to release them. As soon as the three of them were untied, they hurriedly came to Wei Yuxian and protected her behind them. Akong said, "Mr. Qin, please don't get close to our wife." Qin Junling looked a little confused when a bodyguard said this. After all, she was also the president of the Qin group. But at this moment, she couldn't care about that anymore. She only wanted to pack up Wei Yuxian and send it back to Fu Xuanyi. Behind her, Qin Zimu, who had been in a daze just now, finally came to his senses. Seeing his sister's kneeling attitude towards Wei Yuxian, he felt angry in his heart. She walked up to Qin Junling angrily and asked, "Sister, what are you doing? Why are you afraid of this bitch? What if Fu Xuanyi knows that I captured him?" "We Qin." "Shut up," Qin Junling covered Qin Zimu's mouth, his face so black that it could kill someone. "This idiot. She still can't see the situation clearly, and she's still talking nonsense here. It's all because they pampered her so much that she became like this. Take the second young lady out." Qin Junling was afraid that she would say something outrageous to anger Wei Yuxian, so he quickly ordered the bodyguards he brought to take her out. The bodyguards looked at Qin Zimu hesitantly and did not take action immediately. Qin Junling became even more angry and scolded, "Why are you still standing there? My words have no effect, right? Okay." She didn't even listen to her employer. Her Qin Zimu's words are more effective than her Qin Junling's, right? Have these people forgotten who paid them their wages? When the bodyguard saw her getting angry, he said yes without hesitation and went forward to pull the person away. Qin Zimu was still restless after being taken away, and asked Qin Junling, "Sister, what happened to you? When did you become like this? You were not like this before." "Stop her mouth," Qin Junling said, upset, not wanting to hear Qin Zimu say another word. When Xiao saw that her boss was being treated like this, she became aware and took a few girls away, fearing that Mr. Qin would take action on them. After all, she planned this plan. She also caught Wei Yuxian herself. Qin Junling watched them leave, with a hint of viciousness flashing in his eyes. She knew that Qin Zimu couldn't catch Wei Yuxian's brain, and the group of girls around her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 199. It's just that it's not the time to deal with these people yet. Only after Wei Yuxian has finished dealing with them can she have her hands free to take care of these people. The fact that Xiaomu is like this now probably has something to do with these people. Qin Junling turned his attention to Wei Yuxian again and saw that she had half dried her hair, put a big towel on her shoulders, and looked at everything in front of her quietly. Qin Junling felt that Wei Yuxian had become even more different. He thought that when they first met, Wei Yuxian was still a little girl who didn't understand anything. But how long has passed now, she has transformed into the calm demeanor she is now. The speed of growth is really terrifying. She once again tried her best to force out a smile and said, "Miss Wei, let's go change clothes, don't get sick." Wei Yuxian said an emotionless yeah, stood up and walked in front, saying, "Lead the way." Although she was in a state of embarrassment, she still couldn't stop her aura. It was an aura that was very similar to Fu Xuanyi. Unknowingly, she slowly became the same person as Fu Xuanyi, which was a good thing for Wei Yuxian, but not a good thing for others. Qin Junling led the way out of the basement. Someone had been waiting at the door with clothes. Not only that, but a close friend also contacted a doctor to rush over. The injury on Wei Yuxian's face made people's hearts tremble just by looking at it. If Master Xian sees it, they will have no good fruit to eat. So before sending the person back to Master Xian, they had to make Wei Yuxian's face look as good as possible, at least not so scary. The confidant put the clothes on Akong's hands and said, "Miss Wei, please go into the room to change clothes." He made an inviting gesture and invited the person into the nearest room. Wei Yuxian didn't say anything. She took the clothes from Akong and looked at them. They were casual clothes, nothing wrong with them, and she entered the room. Outside, the confidants looked at Wei Yuxian's expressionless face. She was sweating in layers, and her heart had never let go. Seeing him like this, Akong couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "Are you afraid now? What did you do early? Dare to kidnap their wife? Don't even look at the person behind the lady." Wei Yuxian moved quickly and came out of the room in 3 minutes. She changed into dry clothes and felt much more comfortable. However, she was still a little cold and wanted to put on some extra clothes. She looked at Qin Junling with no expression and no fluctuation in her tone, and asked, "Miss Qin, do you have a coat?" Qin Junling still had that forced smile on his face and said, "Yes, Miss Wei, wait a moment." After saying that, she gave her confidant a look, and the latter quickly led someone to find the coat. After a while, the confidant came back with the servant in the villa, holding a brand new coat in his hand, and there was a layer of cold sweat on his forehead because of the hurry. But their pace did not dare to slow down the next step. The confidant had a flattering smile on his face and said, "Miss Wei, this is a new coat. Please put it on quickly." Wei Yuxian said lightly and showed off Fu Xuanyi's energy to the fullest. When the confidant heard her cold reply, his heart trembled a few times. He wanted to wipe the sweat from his forehead, but he didn't dare to act rashly in front of Wei Yuxian, so he could only endure the discomfort. Wei Yuxian put on her coat, her body felt much warmer, and she slowly said 2 words, "Let's go." Qin Junling said okay and led the way. As he walked, he whispered to his confidants, "Send the second young lady to another car, follow me, and ask the old man to come out as well." She knew the seriousness of this matter. Fu Xuanyi would go crazy if he saw the swelling on Wei Yuxian's face. And the crazy Fu Xuanyi can make the entire Kyoto tremble. She alone can't save Xiao Mu, so she has to invite Grandpa out to save this silly sister. Although her sister is stupid, she is still the sister she has doted on for so many years and has a blood relationship with her. She will not let her go. After getting in the car, Wei Yuxian remembered one thing, that is, since her mobile phone was not in her hand, she could not report to Fu Xuanyi that she was safe. She went to ask Lu Cheng and the others, but their mobile phones were also missing. She didn't know where they were thrown by Qin Zimu's people. Helpless, Wei Yuxian could only ask Qin Junling to borrow her cell phone. "Miss Qin, can you borrow your cell phone? I'll give Ah Xian a call." Qin Junling took out his cell phone from his pocket and dialed Fu Xuanyi's number himself. Wei Yuxian put the phone to her ear, listened to the ringing sound, and waited for a while before the call was connected. Say a cold word came from the other side, which chilled Wei Yuxian. Only then did she realize that there was such a big difference between Fu Xuanyi talking to others and talking to himself. How could Fu Xuanyi speak so coldly in front of him? Even when he was jealous, his voice was not so cold. "Actuan," she called out first, her voice soft and soft, completely different from the cold tone just now. She could clearly feel that Fu Xuanyi paused there, and even his breathing changed. Then, the cold voice disappeared and was replaced by a gentle voice that belonged to her alone, "Be good." When Wei Yuxian heard the familiar voice, she couldn't help but have a smile on her face and said The 2 of them stopped talking and listened to each other's breathing. After a while, Wei Yuxian spoke first. She said in a soft voice, "Actuan, I will be there in a minute." On the other side of the phone, Fu Xuanyi paused for a while and then said softly, "Yeah." With so many outsiders around her across the phone, Wei Yuxian had nothing to say to Fu Xuanyi, so she could just tell him that he was safe. She looked at the scenery outside the window and said, "Then I'll hang up first." Fu Xuanyi's Adam's apple rolled and he said, "Don't hang up." Wei Yuxian guessed what he was thinking, and the smile between her eyebrows became more obvious. She said okay and just held the phone without hanging up. Qin Junling watched Wei Yuxian holding her cell phone and not returning it. She didn't dare to urge her, so she could only try to divert her attention. After driving for more than 10 minutes, the car suddenly stopped. Then, the door was opened, and a doctor in a white coat got into the car with a medical kit and an ice pack in his hands. This was the doctor invited by his confidant. He hurried slowly and hurriedly, and finally met the car Wei Yuxian was riding in. As soon as they got in the car, the doctor knew who he was going to see this time without asking, because the injuries on Wei Yuxian's face were too obvious. He saw Wei Yuxian talking on the phone and waited for a while, but did not see Wei Yuxian speak. There seemed to be no sound coming from the other end of the phone, so he couldn't figure out what the operation was. After taking a look at Qin Junling, he asked quietly, "Miss, can I see your face?" Wei Yuxian didn't put down the phone and said, "Sorry to trouble you." She knew that the doctor was innocent and was only responsible for showing her face, so her attitude toward the doctor was normal. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 200. The two people's voices reached Fu Xuanyi's ears through the phone, and then his voice came from the receiver, "What's wrong?" Wei Yuxian raised her face to the doctor and said, "There is something wrong with my face." The doctor is looking at it. As soon as he finished speaking, the air suddenly became terrifyingly quiet. Not only the air on Wei Yuxian's side, but also on Fu Xuanyi's side also became solid. Qin Junling stared closely at Wei Yuxian's expression, listening hard to what was happening on the phone, wanting to see what Fu Xuanyi would say. At this moment, her nerves were tense. Wei Yuxian could also feel that the man's mood was beginning to change, and comforted him, "It's nothing serious, you don't have to worry." She was just slapped a few times and poured a few buckets of cold water on her, which was relatively light. It is estimated that Qin Zimu is also afraid of Fu Xuanyi, so he does not dare to use other methods against her, otherwise, she would not be able to sit here so intact now. After a long time, a man's voice finally came from the phone, a little hoarse and deeper, "Did they touch you?" Ye Wei Yuxian did not deny it. Fu Xuanyi will know what happened when he sees her later, and there is no use denying it now. Wei Yuxian never thought about excusing Qin Zimu. This arrogant second lady had never suffered anything since she was born. It was time to let her know that she would have to pay the price for doing wrong things. "Where is the injury?" Fu Xuanyi asked. Then he remembered what he just heard and asked again, "On the face?" Wei Yuxian said again and said, "I can't tell you clearly on the phone. We'll talk about it in person later." Fu Xuanyi crushed the beads hard with his thumb, and clenched his back molars tightly. It took a lot of effort to suppress the restlessness in his heart, and said, "Yeah. Okay, very good, the Qin family is really good. If you dare to touch his obedience, then there is no need for the Qin family to exist in Kyoto. Good boy, come back quickly." He just wanted to see her now. "Wei Yuxian, I'm very fast." After the doctor looked at Wei Yuxian's face, he found that there was no big problem. It just looked scary. In fact, it was just some skin trauma. Apply ice to reduce the swelling and apply some ointment, and it would be cured soon. He took out the prepared ice cubes and said, "Miss, please apply an ice pack on your face first." Okay. Wei Yuxian took the ice pack with her free hand and put it aside to apply on her face. At the end of autumn, the weather gradually became colder. As soon as the ice cube touched her face, Wei Yuxian hissed from the ice. Fortunately, she was wearing a coat, otherwise she would have been unbearable. "Be good." Fu Xuanyi's worried voice came from the phone. Wei Yuxian comforted him and said, "I'm fine, it's just that the ice is a bit cold." More than 20 minutes later, the car with full power finally parked in the Fu Group's underground parking lot. Wei Yuxian got out of the car holding the ice cube, and walked to the CEO elevator with ease, where she saw Guan Jinyu waiting for them. She first spoke to Fu Xuanyi on the phone, hung up the phone, returned the phone to Qin Junling, and then called, "Assistant Guan." The moment Guan Jinyu saw Wei Yuxian's face, his breathing stopped for a moment, but soon he came back to his senses and called out, "Madam." He invited Wei Yuxian and others into the elevator. There were too many people to load them all at once, so Qin Zimu had to wait for the second elevator. The elevator rose, and soon it reached the floor where the president's office was located. When the door was opened, Wei Yuxian walked out first. She walked into the office with a little haste. As soon as she entered, she saw Fu Xuanyi sitting on the chair, and Fu's father and Fu's mother sitting on the sofa. When the second elder heard the news that Wei Yuxian had been kidnapped, he didn't care about anything. He rushed to Fu Xuanyi's office and asked about it. After learning that Wei Yuxian was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Now that I see Wei Yuxian finally coming back, my heart is completely relieved, but the injury on Yuxian's face." The three of them looked at the door at the same time, and also saw the situation on Wei Yuxian's face. In an instant, the expressions of the three of them darkened, and nameless anger rose in their hearts. Especially Fu Xuanyi, his face was as cold as an iceberg. Wei Yuxian first called Fu's father and Fu's mother, "Dad, Mom." The second elder said hey and stood up to check on her, but when he saw her walking towards Fu Xuanyi, he sat down again. At this time, they will no longer compete with their son for their daughter-in-law. "My daughter-in-law has been kidnapped, and the most anxious person is her son." Wei Yuxian walked straight towards Fu Xuanyi, who also stood up and walked towards her until she hugged her. Actuan Wei Yuxian's voice was full of nostalgia, and she called the man's name in a low voice. Fu Xuanyi hugged the treasure in his arms tightly, lowered his head, looked at the top of her hair, kissed it lovingly, and said in a hoarse voice, "Be good." Finally, I saw how obedient he was. I really don't know how he survived the torturous waiting just now. The two hugged each other for a while, and Wei Yuxian felt a little tight in her chest. She struggled in his arms for a while, and then he let go of her, pulled some distance away, and lowered her head to look at her face. Up close, the injuries on her face seemed more serious. He reached out his hand and wanted to touch her face, but he was afraid of hurting her. After thinking about it, he still didn't put his hand on it. There was no room for anyone else in his eyes, only the obedience he longed for. His tone was full of distress as he asked, "Does it hurt?" Wei Yuxian shook her head gently and said, "It doesn't hurt anymore." Before applying ice, she felt her face was a little warm and swollen. Now, some of the swelling has gone away and she feels much better. Fu Xuanyi put his hand on her shoulder and asked, "What did they do to you?" His tone was a little calm, but there was a fierce look in his eyes. Wei Yuxian knew that he was far from as calm as he seemed on the surface, and he was enduring it. She didn't hide anything and said truthfully, "Just slapped me in the face a few times and poured a few buckets of cold water on me." "What else?" Fu Xuanyi narrowed his eyes and looked at Wei Yuxian with even more distressed eyes. Wei Yuxian shook her head and said, "No more." "Who hit me?" "Did you remember those people?" he asked again. "Remember? Point it out to me later." After Fu Xuanyi said this, he leaned into her ear and said again, "My husband will avenge you." As soon as the word husband came out, the tips of Wei Yuxian's ears turned red, and she said shyly. The two of them were talking, and no one made a sound to disturb them. Fu's father and Fu's mother didn't want to make a sound, but the others didn't dare to make a sound. After the two of them finished talking, Qin Junling stood up under great pressure and called out, "Uncle, Aunt, Xian." Only then did the second elder turn his attention to her. His face was not very good, and he responded coldly,